Well, greetings all. Joseph Kursky here on the Esri education team. I'm joined by some wonderful colleagues today on my own team. Got Sabrina Kernia here, Brian Baldwin, and we are thrilled to have all of you here. Feel free to put your location in the chat box right now. We are recording the session, and we've got Exploring the Urban Environment with ArcGIS Urban today. Oh, it's going to be a great day. It really is. Kira Moorish is here. Kira is one of my favorite people in all of geospatial. She's very energetic and very knowledgeable, and it's great to be working with her. One note as we get going here, folks, we do have an education new landing page here that you are welcome to go to get archives of past talks, chats, and also to see what's coming up in the future. Preview of coming attractions. Stick around. We'll tell you what's happening next month later on in the session. So I'm going to turn it over to Kira right now. And again, welcome. Hope you're having a great day, and we're looking forward to exchanging with you.
Thanks, Joseph. Good morning, everyone. My name's Kira Moorish. I'm a solution engineer on the Smart Cities Solutions team here in Redlands. My background's in landscape architecture, and recently, the last year and this year as well, our team is partnering with the higher ed team to integrate ArcGIS Urban into studios. So I'm going to share with you, starting with sharing my screen here, and I'll share with you a little bit about ArcGIS Urban. We'll step through a demonstration, and then we'll stop for some Q&A, and I'll explain a little bit about how we've worked with some other universities as well. Before I get started, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we're going to start by looking at a little bit of the background why we developed ArcGIS Urban. It was in response to some of the many challenges that our cities are facing. So for me, we work a lot in Southern California. We're in downtown LA, and one of the big challenges that LA is facing is the homelessness crisis and needing to have affordable housing increased. So for many of your cities, I know Maximo, which we talked a little bit when we just jumped on, you're in downtown LA too, is that right?
That is correct, Kira.
Okay, and would you say, like, is there anything else you would add to the challenges for LA?
Poverty, which leads to homelessness, mental disorders, that are also created by poverty, a better distribution of wealth into underserved communities, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they're all challenges that we look at when we're working with the LA County. And also saw Sue Oldenburg from Rutgers on the call as well. So Sue, I've been working with Rutgers last semester and this semester with Urban, and we're working at the moment in Woodbridge in New Jersey. And that town is looking for economic development. That's one of the challenges that it's facing. So feel free to maybe pop in the chat window any other challenges for the areas that you're interested in or that you've worked with as well for the cities. Okay, so ArcGIS Urban is designed to bring together multiple players that are involved in urban planning. For the cities that we work with, we're looking at planning teams that need tools that bring policy making alive in terms of being able to make it 3D, to make it more analytical and scenario driven. The citizens, of course, are all important. They want to get involved on their own time and make their voices heard. Many people just care very deeply about the communities that they live in. The idea of ArcGIS Urban and integration with some of the other software we have, like story maps, like ArcGIS Hub, is the ability to engage the community and get feedback on proposed developments. And then depending on who we're working with, we have developers and AEC firms that need connection to context. In terms of universities that we've worked with, the planning teams are often the students themselves. So the studios and the students become the city planning team. They're engaging with citizens. So it could be the citizens of Woodbridge, New Jersey, for example, or downtown LA to give feedback on their proposals. And then the AEC firms and developers, these are sometimes even architecture students that are using like Revit models, and they're used to modeling in a different software. And then they're able to bring that information into ArcGIS Urban, which is a platform to integrate multiple different types of data. And it helps enrich the experience of planners who may be used to looking at policy documents, and now they can see these designs that the architecture students are creating. So all these different departments can start to come together on this one platform. Okay. Maybe pop in the chat window, or if you have your camera on, give a thumbs up if you've ever created a model like this, or your students have created these types of 3D models. Yeah, Maximo's got a thumbs up. I'll give a thumbs up as well. So in the landscape architecture studio, when I was going through school, these are the types of models that we would create, either with the laser cutter, or we'd get other materials together to create these beautiful, compelling 3D models. The problem is that these are virtually impossible to update. They're difficult to share. If you do want to share them, you can see all of the people here. You have to bring them to the location of the model, or maybe take the model on a little tour to different locations to bring it to the people. So what we're trying to do, and what's wonderful about the technologies now, is that we can take this classic way of modeling the environment and replicate it in a digital space. So we have now the ability to represent the built environment in this photorealistic way. You can see on the right-hand side, we have what we call a 3D mesh. So this is from imagery. This provides a beautiful, realistic context of the existing environment. And then on the left-hand side, we have a schematic view that's generated either from building footprints, or in some cases, we have some LiDAR data that we can use to generate this information. What this means is, now that it's digital format, it's easy to update, it's easy to interact with, we can make proposed changes to the model, and then we can get real-time feedback. Now, just a little bit about ArcGIS Urban in general and some of its key components. First of all, it is a web-based application. This means all you need is the internet connection and a browser, and of course, the licensing. And from what I understand, many of you will have access to the licensing for ArcGIS Urban. You just need to associate it with your username. But there's nothing to download for students. It's very valuable in terms of teaching virtually. We can have collaboration across teams of students. They can work individually. They can work in small teams on different parts of a city, as long as they have the internet connection and a browser. Some of the key components that we'll go over in the demonstration include the ability to visualize projects. And when I say projects in the context of ArcGIS Urban, these are parcel level developments. So imagine you're a real estate developer and you're coming to the city and you have a beautiful proposal for a new apartment building. Then we can track the development lifecycle of that project in Urban itself. And this is also where, if you happen to have these beautiful building information models, or Studio Max models, or Revit models, we can integrate those into this built environment as well. In addition to being able to visualize the models in the context of the city, you can see in the slide we've got these lines coming out here, and many of you are probably familiar with this. This is a line of sight analysis. So we can, alongside the ability to visualize this area, we can also conduct some analysis of the buildings that are proposed. Okay. Next is scenario planning. So as cities undergo a lot of planning initiatives, and especially updates to zoning code and land use, what's really critical is being able to visually understand how things will change. One of the advantages of Urban, and one of the things that I've experienced myself when we're in the studio, and students are looking at zoning code is when it's in 3D, you can really begin to understand what the impacts are of a height change to the zoning code, or what happens if you change the floor area ratio. You can see straight away in real time what these changes look like and how they affect the building forms for the city. So in terms of students' learning experience, this is very helpful rather than having to read the zoning codes off of a PDF document, for example. Okay, so we can guide change and measure impact as well. So a lot of the GIS analysis tools that we use to help understand how a city functions, like where is affordable housing needed? Where do we need to look at more broadband access? What's the economic development environment? What's the demographics of the city? All of those layers can be visualized and added into Urban as well. In the slide, we're looking at the city of Fullerton. Their goal for using ArcGIS Urban at the moment is to propose some increased scenarios that look at what happens if we increase affordable housing in these specific areas that they have in the city. And to help them plan for those areas, they're using this type of analysis that we add to Urban as what we call an indicator. So this is showing them the percentage of renter households in particular census tracts around the city. So any type of spatial analysis that makes sense and helps inform your decision-making process can be added to Urban as well. And lastly, one of its strengths is digital engagement. So the ability to engage the community is critical for cities to communicate their planning and design process. And it's also a really great experience for students when they're working in the studio if they're collaborating with the city, which is what I see a lot when we're working with different universities. There is some point where there's a presentation to the city themselves. And one of the ways that you can do that is through the Urban model. You can integrate the Urban model into what we're looking at here. This is a hub page, which is, if you haven't heard of Hub, we can talk more about that, and feel free to pop any questions in the chat window as well. Essentially like a web page that's integrated with many of the Esri products, and it allows you to take your Urban models and place it in a kind of a context where you're communicating a narrative as well as the map itself, which can be a really nice experience for students to bring together all of the work that they're doing in a studio to make a final presentation. Okay, I'll pause there just for a second to see if there's any questions. I don't know, Joseph, if you can see any questions that have popped up.
Not yet, but this is fascinating. And just a note that we did have one of these higher ed chats just in November on Hub. So if folks are interested, we have the whole recording there just about 4 months ago. Thanks, Kira.
Oh gosh, that's great to know. Okay, so moving over now to an Urban model. And Joseph, can you see that? It's just the city of Boston.
Ooh, yeah, cool.
Okay. So let's start to step through some of these major components that we just talked about. So again, ArcGIS Urban is a web-based scenario planning application for planning and design professionals. The idea is having this common platform. It ensures data consistency and it allows collaboration across teams, so that partnership with the students, with the city, with maybe private developers as well, can all happen in this one environment. Urban's made up of 3 main components. We have projects, which we talked about briefly. These are our parcel level developments. We have plans, future land use plans, zoning plans, redevelopment plans, and then indicators, which are our spatial visualizations of any type of data that makes sense for a city to visualize. What we're looking at here, this is that photo realistic representation of the city. This is a 3D mesh in terms of the data type. And Urban supports both this type of visualization as well as a schematic visualization of the city. And if you're ever modeling with your studio any underground utilities or underground like subway lines, etc., there's also the ability to visualize these types of data underground as well. With the latest enhancement to Urban's data model, you have the ability to filter content. And for those of you familiar with ArcGIS Online, you'll notice this is the same type of sharing model that you see in ArcGIS Online. So any data that's publicly available, that you've published, anything in the organization and groups, you can filter by this type of content, which is handy depending on who you're presenting to. This determines what you can see in terms of the data in the map as well. Okay, so for some background, this is the Boston model, and we've been working with the Boston Planning and Development Agency, who is responsible for planning and economic development across the entire city. They're using the indicators that we see here to influence their planning decisions. And this is where the indicators become very powerful. So essentially, the indicators are any type of spatial visualization for any demographic or analytical data that the city uses to make planning decisions. So I'll zoom out here a little bit. Here we go. So this is a flood hazard risk layer, and this is used to show neighborhoods or proposed developments that are at risk from certain flood events. If we go back to the list, you'll notice a range of other custom indicators. Let's say urban heat islands we have here. We can take in live services as well, like Esri's World Traffic Service. We can see congestion in a city. And we also have some out-of-the-box indicators for the US that indicate population density, where crime is concentrated, etc. So let me show you those just quickly. I'm going to go back to the list here and scroll down, and we'll see some of the demographic analysis and density analysis that comes right out of the box. Okay. So next, let's take a look at the planning aspect of urban. So for urban plans, are future land use plans or zoning plans. And for Boston, the plan that we're going to take a look at is in South Boston. So this is an industrial area, and the goal of this plan is to visualize what this would look like if it was transformed into a mixed-use higher density area. So in terms of the challenges that Boston is dealing with, it's like a huge population growth. And so this is a way for them to start to communicate to the public what this would look like if we imagine a change to the zoning types around this area. So what we've just done now is go from what we call the overview of urban, and we're going into the plan editor. So for all your students that would be working with urban, when they have the licenses associated with their usernames, then they have access to everything that we're going to be looking at now. Okay, so one of the the core strengths of urban is this ability to take previously static zoning information and transform it into digital zoning. So if we go to the zoning tab, and let's click one of these zoning areas. So this is the city of Boston. This is all of their zone throughout the city. So typically zoning codes are these thick legal documents. They're difficult to interpret. They're hard for students to visualize sometimes. So urban becomes a very effective tool for them to be able to understand what the implications are for any types of zoning change. So right now, if we go to development, to imagine if nothing happened to this area, to the current zoning, this is a likely development pattern that we'd see in this scenario. And a common exercise is to look at how we could change this existing zoning to accommodate growing housing and job needs. Then we can use these scenarios to engage in a discussion with developers, planning agencies. This could be internal studio discussions, or it could be presentations to the city. So we're trying to figure out how much change is enough or how much more change is needed. So now I'm switching to another scenario. And in this proposed scenario, you'll see the development potential changes dramatically. with new height limits and a variety of building uses. All of these plausible building forms that you see popping up here are generated from the zoning code itself. So another advantage here is if you're working in a studio and perhaps you have policy students and or perhaps you have a mix of design students and policy students, these building forms are not modeled individually, they're generated automatically based on the zoning parameters. So this can be a real time saver in terms of generating some building masses very quickly in order to communicate your idea. So if we go back to zoning, I'm going to select this zone here. And so you can get a sense of what happens when we change the underlying zoning. I'm going to make some modifications to this DOT Zone 3. These are the typical zoning parameters that you'd expect from a city's zoning code. We have coverage, FAR, height. We have support for tiers and setbacks. We've recently added skyplane functionality. And for each zone in the plan area, you can add allowed space use types. So for this zone, I'm going to change the FAR. I'll raise it quite a bit. So let's change it from 10 to 20. I'll change the maximum height from 200 to 400 feet. And then I'll save the changes and watch what happens to the building forms on the parcels there. So they change automatically based on any changes that you make in the zone itself. This is a very quick tool for students to start to understand what happens if you change any of these parameters. It's also a great tool to have real-time discussions about proposals. Okay. So for each of these scenarios, I'm going to switch back to scenario 1. In addition to being able to visualize what this build out would look like based on the underlying zoning code, we can also generate some capacity metrics. So I mentioned for Boston, they're trying to accommodate increased population. And if we do nothing at all to this area, you can see we're creating a few jobs. You can see some CO2 emissions, energy use. Some of these metrics are calculated as well. But watch what happens when we switch to our second scenario where we're proposing mixed use and higher density. You can see those numbers change pretty dramatically as well. So now we're getting a lot closer to what our target population would be. We're increasing households for the area, the jobs have risen, we have daily trips, and you have the metrics down here as well. So all of these metrics that we're looking at are calculated at the scenario scale or at the individual parcel level, and they can be downloaded to an Excel sheet. So this is what the Excel sheet looks like. We have the scenario information, and then we have some area information for space use types and for zoning types. And the way we've seen cities use this is in some of our other products. So you might want to be taking some of these data into an operations dashboard, for example, or you could use this to plug into other, maybe other formulas. Like sometimes we see these numbers going into some transportation modeling, for example. Okay, so in addition to modeling these scenarios based on the zoning code, Urban can also model building types and space use types. So let's take a quick look at what that looks like. I'm going to switch to development here. I'm going to select this building type and I'm going to open it up. Okay, so the building types in Urban are defined as a mix of space uses. So in this case, we've got a mixed use building, we've got retail on the bottom, and we've got office on the top. And it's these space uses that drive the capacity metrics that we saw earlier. The space uses are defined either, we have some default space uses that you can use, or you can also propose space uses. So what we're going to do now is I'll create a new space use type, and then we're going to use that space use type in a building type so you can see how that function works. So I'm going to go to manage the space use types. We'll create a space use type for this building called, for this plan called affordable housing. We'll add a description. Okay, we can adjust the color here. There's RGB values and the hex values as well. And let's say, let's make this floor height maybe 10. And then the interesting stuff will happen over here on the capacity tab. So this is where you start creating your custom coefficients for the area. So let's say like 750 square feet per household for the affordable housing, maybe the population around 405. So these numbers that I'm plugging in will come from the city itself. So as long as you have access to this type of information, this is where you'd be able to add it in and start to customize those metrics that we were seeing earlier. Let's add one more here for the parking. And then I'll save it. Once it's saved, this space use type is now available across the plan to anyone who may be working as well. And we can use it to start to build a brand new building type. So I'll come over to develop. I'm going to select a parcel down here. We'll go to modify. Now you can see a list of building types here. Urban comes with about, I think it's about 49 building types out of the box. And you can propose your own. So let's create an affordable housing building type. In the building parts configuration, I'll just add a new space use type, affordable housing. We'll specify the number of floors. So let's maybe make it 3 exact. And then we'll click OK. Once the building type's created, we can select it and apply it to the parcel. So this is really valuable if you're working in an area where there are specific building types that you know need to be included in an area plan, for example. Like I've seen some city plans where it's very specific about we need on the bottom 3 levels of retail and in the top all residential, and that's the only type of building that can be included in a specific area. So Urban gives you the flexibility to be able to model that. All right, so now I'm going to just zoom into this parcel. Here we go. So one of the key enhancements to Urban that was introduced in a couple of releases ago is the ability to visualize sky planes. So to do that, I'm going to just start by turning on the zoning envelope here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see this building almost fills that total zoning envelope, but the zoning envelopes are really great tools for students to see what the total allowable building form is for a particular parcel. So sky planes are based on a parcel edge. So I'm going to add a front street sky plane here. And let's test the angle of departure. Maybe let's try 55 degrees. And we'll have a vertical offset of, let's try like 60 feet and see how we go. So you can see that the building reacts to the constraints of the sky plane. So typically you'll see this type of sky plane in probably like taller, denser areas. And the idea is that it's going to bring more light and air to the pedestrian level. If it exists in the zoning code, then you can start to model it in Urban as well. Down the bottom here, you'll see the analysis toolbar. So this is where we have the ability to model shadows. for any developments. You set the date and the time. We can also use some of the interactive analysis tools, including measuring distance, area, and a new tool we've just added called the line of sight tool, which many of you might be familiar with. So this tool allows you to calculate views from a proposed building to, in this case, the adjacent neighborhood. Green indicates unobstructed views and red shows us where the view is obstructed, in this case, probably by a building or sometimes by a tree. The nice thing is that you're able to move the observer location to different parts of your scenario. And this interactive nature is also a good discussion tool to talk about the impacts of views in the proposed development. Okay. In addition to being able to use some of these analysis tools and the scenario planning tools, we also have the ability to use street level imagery. So this is an integration with our partner Mapillary, which allows you to see a side-by-side comparison of your proposed development with existing conditions on the ground. This can be a nice visual check for students to look at, okay, I'm proposing this on the left-hand side, and then this is what actually exists right now on the street. Okay, so that's called the street level imagery. Let me close this. Any scenarios you create can be published to the overview. You decide what you want to publish, you decide which layers you want to publish, and also the metrics that you want to publish. Once they are published, then they're available in the overview to present either to the stakeholders, to review internally if you're working in teams in a studio. All of the visualizations from the scenario are there, as well as all of the metrics that we saw earlier, both in the Excel sheet and in the capacity dashboard. We scroll down here so you can take a look. So there's all the metrics, and then these will be the scenarios. So with many studios that we've worked with, you can have, say, one plan, and you could have teams work on specific scenarios within that plan. And then this is a really nice way just to have studio reviews of them. So here's our business as usual scenario. Here's our proposed zone change scenario. Exactly what we were looking at in the plan editor, but now available to kind of scroll through here in the overview. In addition to being able to see the full build out here, we can also enable our public comment period. So this can be used either directly with the public if you're engaging with the public, or it could be used for the different studio teams to give each other comments on specific aspects of the scenarios that they're creating. So the public comment period is enabled for a designated time period. Once that time period is complete, you can still see all of the comments, and they're available just as an item in your ArcGIS Online organization. So it's some more data that you can download and you can do some further analysis on as well. So this is where you would enable it. You set the end date for the comment period. And if I zoom in here a little bit, you can see some examples of what those comments look like when they're kind of dragged and dropped to the area. If we scroll down, you can see I've made a couple of comments here as well. So I'm going to pause here just for a second and take any questions. I know we just saw quite a bit in terms of the functionality, the scenario planning, etc. So
Yeah.
do we have any
Hi,
questions
Kira.
that popped up? Yeah.
Well, this has been wonderful. And when I think of, we've got a 3D world, and it makes sense that we've got 3D analytical tools, but it was a long time coming, right, folks? We used to have you had to have add-ons and, high-end graphics card and, all the rest of it that went into being able to do even line of sight stuff in the not too distant past. So I just love this. Yes, Kira, so thanks. But Maximo did have a question about, does ArcGIS Urban use native BIM files to be incorporated in the iTwin existing urban context? Or is there a need to use some sort of data interoperability tool to incorporate these kinds of BIM models?
Oh, that's a great question. And I think I have an example here for you. So the answer is there's no data interoperability that's needed. What's happened recently with a collaboration between Esri and Autodesk is that we've created a new layer. It's called a building scene layer. This means that you can take your building information model, you can take your Revit data directly into Urban. And in this case, it's attached to a project. So the projects, again, are the parcel level developments. But this is a particular scenario that it's attached to. And if I scroll down here, Maximo, can you see that? This is called the Building Explorer.
Yes.
And this takes advantage of all of the detail of the building model itself. So before we could visualize this type of data, but now you can actually interrogate it. So you can look at specific floors. You can filter by discipline and categories. So you can turn things on and off. So we've got architectural, in this case, mechanical and structural. So everything that's included in this BIM model is now available to be visualized in the Building Explorer. What do you think, Maximo?
Awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Eh?
That is pretty amazing. And the rendering is so fast too. And you're just on a regular old laptop, right, Kira?
Yeah, I know. That's all. Sometimes I wish I had like a gaming laptop, but yeah, this is just a regular laptop. All right. Any other questions that have popped up?
Hey, Kira, I have a questions here from probably audience also have in mind. Is that example from Boston, Massachusetts can be used for teaching? Is that available for anybody? And can you also show them how to enable urban license from ArcGIS Online? Maybe?
Sure. Let's have a go. So I'm going to pop over to my content. So in the first part of that was, is Boston available for everyone? So Urban comes with the license with 4 example cities. We have cities of different sizes, starting from a small town in South Carolina called Hardyville. It's a town of about 6,000. We've got Hardyville, Uppsala in Sweden, Melbourne in Australia, which is our largest city, and also Boston. So all of these cities come as part of Urban. Out of the box, all the data is configured. And we also have tutorials on YouTube that use the example cities. So that's a good way to start to familiarize yourself with ArcGIS Urban itself. When you have the license, this is where you would come to create the model. So I'll just do a quick test model here so you can see the example cities. So that'll pop up. This is the screen that you get. And then you get the example city picker. And as well as these 4 cities, there's also the ability to create your own template from scratch. So when I've been working with universities, this is what we do. You can create an empty template, or you use the USA default template, which will give you some of the space use types and building types that we saw earlier. So that's for the example cities. Now, if I pop back over here, let's go and take a look at the licensing. And Kansarina and Brian and Joseph, you might have to guide me a little bit here, but this is where we would go to, let's go to the organization. And members, or probably licenses, isn't it?
Yes.
And these are all the licenses in our organization. If I scroll down a little bit further, this is what you would see. So Rena, is this what people see after it's been sort of turned on, or will this be sitting here already for their organizations?
Yes, yes. And the way that you give the license, the same like you give the license for other apps as well. So you just have to click, and it's a bundle between the ArcGIS Urban and also the City Engine.
Okay, so you go to the user,
If
and
you
then you
like,
can
choose
just,
one of the user, for example, even yourself, if you like.
let's pop up here.
And for the administrator of ArcGIS Online, they also can add it as a part of new member default template. So in here, it just
Cool.
made on licenses. Yeah, manage add-on license. And if you scroll down, you see that bundle. Yes.
Got it.
Yeah. So all the institution that have the institutional license with Esri should have that. If you don't have it, feel free to contact Esri account manager for your campus.
Nice.
And hey, Rena, do you want to address Taylor's question there as well?
Yeah, the question is ArcGIS Urban available for on-premise ArcGIS enterprise deployment, or is it ArcGIS Online only?
Good
I
question.
think that's for Kira.
Yeah. So we just hired at the end of last year someone who is devoted to developing Urban specifically for the enterprise environment, so you can have it within your own infrastructure. So it's coming, it's on the roadmap. Right now it exists in ArcGIS Online as an extension.
So another question, Kira, is there a student edition to the software?
There's the free trial and there's the licenses with the institutional agreement. I don't know if there's,
So there is no really student edition. If you're students and you add it to ArcGIS Online and they can use ArcGIS Online, you can give that license as well, to, the ArcGIS Urban license for that student. So.
Yeah, so the student would either like have to contact a professor or the site license administrator. What would you recommend for?
Yes, so many universities already include ArcGIS Urban by default to all the member of ArcGIS Online. But if you don't see that, okay, let us, Kira, probably you can demo a little bit from that application launcher next to your name. That's the key that you already have Urban, right? So you can see that's Urban. If you don't see that, then contact your license administrator and ask for that Urban to be turned on for you, the license for you. There is a question in here, a technical question first here from Peter Noob. Are there any special considerations or workflows for incorporating near map data in Urban?
Right, that's a good question. So there's an I guess the basic thing with Nearmap is because it's a partner, so they do all of the processing of the mesh themselves. They create the 3D mesh that we were looking at earlier for Boston, and they have pretty good coverage for all of the US, Canada, and Australia. When you get the data, you download it as an SLPK, which is like a scene layer package. And the workflow is just simply to upload it to your organization as an item. So for an example, if you just go to the content section, this is just like a zipped file of the data, if you like. And when it's uploaded from your computer, this is it. It's just published as the 3D mesh. It's like a scene layer, if you like, in Urban in terms of the item type in ArcGIS Online. And then where it lives in Urban itself, here I'm going from the overview. This is what we call the data manager of Urban. And if I scroll down here a little bit, you'll see this existing buildings layer for satellite visualization scene layer And this is where the mesh is plugged in. You just add it by clicking the portal picker here, the little pencil. You choose wherever this is hosted, either on your content, in your organization, etc. It'll look like, it'll just pop up here as another item that you can add. And then that's all you need to do. That's kind of the basic workflow. Is that enough information, or is there any additional questions related to that, the mesh?
That's pretty cool, Kira. So in other words, it's not just a flat image draped on top of all those 3D objects. It's actually a 3D mesh itself.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet.
It's pretty
Hey,
cool.
Kira, there is a quick question in here. You are using Chrome browser. Is there any browser limitations? And what is the underlying 3D technology that you use?
Okay, so that's good questions. So for the browser, the only browser I think that we never use, and there might be a restriction on it, but I'm not sure, is like Internet Explorer. But in terms of like Safari, all the other browsers will work fine, as long as it supports like WebGL as well, is another consideration. And then in terms of the 3D technology, the visualizations that we're seeing for the buildings, these are scene layers. So this technology is inherent in the platform, the Esri platform. And Urban is inherently 3D. So it's looking for things like scene layers here, anything else here, web scenes. So the trees, the buildings, etc. These are all created in ArcGIS Pro. Using the technology there, it could be just extrusion, and then converting it to a multi-patch and publishing it to Pro. That's part of the 3D technology. And then the other part that we saw when the plausible building forms were being generated automatically in the scenarios, this is a type of technology called procedural technology. This comes from a little history, and I'll try not to go down a rabbit hole here, but it's like a technology that comes from our Zurich Development Center. It's a technology that's part of another product we have called City Engine, which is linked pretty closely to Urban. So that procedural technology is the core technology for Urban in terms of generating those building forms on the fly. The rest of it, the contextual information, is the 3D layers coming from Pro. Does that help answer the question?
Awesome. Awesome. There is another question in here that really good from Lori here. Do you have an example that city that are using Urban within an ArcGIS hub interface for longer term city planning and community engagement?
Let's have a look.
Yeah, that's the one that Wisconsin.
Oh yeah, let's go here. This will be
yeah.
in education.
Yeah.
And here it is.
Here you go.
So that hub gallery site is just a great site in general, I think, to look at all of the education related hub sites, as well as some other sectors. So this is the University of Wisconsin-Madison. They used Urban last semester, and this is their hub site that describes the project. If we scroll down here a little bit, and it might take a second or two to load, but we'll be able to see the proposed scenarios that they created in Urban. There we go. So let's see if I can put this link in the chat window, I think.
I can help you with that.
Oh, thanks. And Rena, from the licensing perspective with Hub and Hub Premium, these are also available for universities, is that right?
Yes, by default with their ArcGIS Online, they have ArcGIS Hub basic, but if any of the campus want to have the community engagement 2 ways, there's follower, you manage the follower, you actually engage with them, then there is ArcGIS Hub Premium and Untitled, but need to contact Esri customer service for that, for activation.
Oh, okay. Good to know. All right.
And
Any
I
other
just put in the chat the link to that
Oh,
on the
great.
market plan.
Thank you.
Stuff. Yeah, that's a good example. Is there any more question, Joseph?
Not that I've seen that we haven't talked about. I put a link in there earlier to Mapillary, which I dearly love because it is one of those citizen science tools that you can actually have your students actually use tomorrow. It is that easy to get into. But I really liked Kira's integration of it. I didn't realize that was there. Very cool.
I think Joseph already answered, but probably Kira can add as well. Is there a list of pre-existing Esri authoritative indicators?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. This is what I always do. I go to the content. It's going to be in the Living Atlas.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then I'll just search, usually just pop in urban or indicator. I can't remember which one it comes up as, and then you can see like this is one of them, the urban heat islands. Let's look at a range of different things here. Urban areas. Let me try indicators and see what comes up. Here we go, urban indicators, population change.
Nice.
This is park access, housing vacancy. So that would be what you would search for, urban indicators, and that would bring up.
And Kira, this author, urban_Lisa, that's someone on your team?
Yeah, that'll
so
probably
we can look at the metadata.
Yeah.
Okay, super.
Yeah.
I'm always, gravitating toward, whenever we're doing, we get lots of questions about this, authoritative sources on topic X. And so you kind of gravitate towards certain authors. That's why I'm always wondering about who's who in the Living Atlas or ArcGIS Online in general. Very good to know.
Got it.
Thanks.
Hey Kira, do you have a list of resources that we can offer to the audience? And we will make it available as well after that, but go ahead.
Okay, I'll step through most of them and we can send the links. Yeah. So these are the Learn lessons from Learn ArcGIS. The ones that I really recommend for getting to know ArcGIS Urban are these two: Plan for Urban Change in Cancun and Climate Proof a Neighborhood. This is a project in Amsterdam, which is very fascinating, and it will take you through all of the different aspects of urban. You can see the estimated time down here. Then we have some shorter content here. So a lot of these are videos that will link to our YouTube channel. So we have a series of tutorials called ArcGIS Urban Essentials that are available to take a look at as well. These are also like some nice blogs that give you an overview of the experience of, in this case, this is Wisconsin-Madison's experience of using urban in the classroom, which can be helpful as well. So is it best to pop those in the chat window?
Yes.
The Learn link in there. Yep. And don't worry, folks, we will archive this whole presentation as well and put it on the Hub site for the higher ed chats. So we've got that one covered, Kira. Thanks.
Okay,
do a search on urban when you go to the Learn site. And keep checking back, folks, because these lessons and resources, they continually update and improve. So keep checking back.
And we also have the updated landing page for the ArcGIS Urban for higher education, right?
Oh yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Let me get the link here. All right, Kira, do you have any last last advice or things that you want to show before we closing the session?
Sure. I guess I'd like to just say, feel free to reach out if you would like to start to use Urban in your studio, or if you wanted to touch base with any of the other universities that have used Urban already. I'm happy to send a list out with the contacts that you can have a chat to. And I'm happy to help. Our team, part of our role is to help support implementing Urban in studio courses. So if you're interested, let us know.
Indeed. And Joseph, do you want to give the sneak peek of next month?
I'm just going to share something really briefly here, and that is right here. First of all, thanks so much, Kira. That was, it's just so inspiring and so amazing to have this stuff at your fingertips. And so we'd love to hear back from you folks as you use Urban in education and research. We're always getting questions. Hey, show me who's doing this and how they're doing it. So if you could share some of those stories in the future, we'd love to hear about them. But the higher ed hub, we talked about hub. Why are we using hub for higher ed chats? Well, it's a great way of archiving and showing all the recordings and all the resources. So this will be archived soon. Rena's always like spot on getting these things up online. But preview of coming attractions. Next month, we've got, this will be on April 6th.
Maybe you can show it in the hub site,
Yep.
Joseph. Yeah,
oh,
that's
yeah.
already open. Yeah.
So let's go to the hub site. And are you seeing the hub site right now?
Yes.
Oh, super. I love it when things work. So look at this. We've got this one here, but future chats, unstructured data. So you've got, let's say, a bunch of unstructured documents, Word files, tables, PDFs. Some of you may recall this from the Esri user conference last summer when there was a presentation given on this tool, LocateXT. So we were thinking, gosh, wouldn't that be great to have the education community start using some of these? Because as we all know, there's archives of stuff, even at a typical university departmental office and probably in your own faculty offices of stuff that you, wouldn't it be great to map that? But I've got to comb through either paper or digital documents that are not a geodatabase of some sort. So how do you map that stuff? Well, that's where LocateXT will come in. So we're excited about that next month, April 6th.
Yes, and registration is open now.
Okay, I'm going to stop share just in case Kira's got, or any of my other colleagues have some things they want to show at the last part of this. But thanks so much, everyone.
Yes, and thank you so much for Kira. That was awesome. And then everybody, if you want to connect more with Kira or with us, let us know.